Uh, Hello, Sabida, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sabida, can you? Yeah, yeah. Could you please? Yeah, we are going to start in one minute, 1 minute from now.
Okay.
So you're ready, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
It's now. Let me check now. Okay. So you can introduce yourself in, I mean, in the chat box because until now we have 61 from all around the world, and people are
Yeah,
still.
sure.
I mean, yeah, still. Yeah, because I think that uh, they were in a previous session. That was a speaker from Turkey, and now, yeah, they are shifting. I mean, because we have different things.
Okay. Hey, hello everyone. How are you? How is
You
everything?
can write in the chat box if you want to check your chat box. Okay, you can write. I think you will
Yeah,
be able
yes.
to write in the chat box. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we are going to start. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Um, so, on behalf of English Language Center, University of Technology, Applied Sciences, Ibri-Oman, we would like to welcome you all to our great session. Our guest speaker today will join us from Iran, and the topic looks very interesting. The topic is bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching. But before that, let me introduce our great speaker. Uh, Dr. Sepdidah Damirchi, you can correct my pronunciation about the name.
It's
Holds
okay.
BA in English Language and Literature, MA in Linguistics, and PhD in Cognitive Science Language. She is interested in research in the field of cognitive linguistics, cognitive semantics, neuroscience of language, and neuroscience of bilingualism, and neuroscience of learning. So, Sabida, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for our friends who are here. Let's just start the session and not to waste
Can
time.
you make your
Uh,
voice louder, a bit louder, please?
yes, yes, sure, sure. Now it's better. I tried. Okay. Just let me see the chat box. Yeah. Can you see my slides now? If
Yes,
yes,
yes.
we can. Okay, I can start from the beginning. Okay. We're going to talk about how we can connect neuroscience of learning to online teaching these days. But of course, we do not have that much time to go through the all aspects of that. But it's a kind of just introduction to the things related to neuroscience of learning, and we touch just the surface of some aspects. And maybe later we have time to talk about other aspects, maybe other webinars or other sessions, we can talk about them. But today, because I know that you are from different backgrounds, I tried my best just to uh, clarify the very specific points. Um, this is just my picture, and actually, this is my introduction slide, but just I should say that I hold BA in English Language and Literature. I hold MA in Linguistics. and now I'm a PhD student of cognitive science language. I have the experience of teaching in China, and I really love neuroscience and brain in general, and cognitive science, of course. Today we are going to have a kind of introduction phase, introduction to brain and to neuroscience, just in a few minutes. Then we go through bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching, and we talk about some aspects of that. Then it's a good idea just to go through principles of learning. There are some principles which are really important, and maybe we can consider them if we want to talk about mind-brain education. I mean, the kind of education which is based on neuroscientific findings and related to brain and brain-based in general. We are going to talk about this beautiful, actually, thing we see here. This is our brain, and it's a really, really complicated thing because we have something around 86 billion neurons, which means nerve cells in our brain, and they have lots of connections. 86 billion neurons and lots of connections. That is a great thing to consider, and we can even compare brain cells with the universe, or our, I can say, brain to the universe, because when we talk about our brain cells, and in general our brain, we talk about a very, very great aspect that should be considered, and it is really unknown, and we have to know more and more about it, like the universe. And many things in our brain is just something like a mystery, even nowadays. You should bear it in mind that when we talk about brain is not just about logic. Brain is important for emotion too, okay? Especially in teaching, you should be aware that you should talk about logic and emotion at the same time. You cannot just say that, okay, I talk about cognition without emotion. Emotion matters, you know, especially in learning and memory. I just wanted to show you, actually. As you see, this is a neuron or nerve cell, and it has some parts. We're not going through the details of that. Just I wanted to introduce this beautiful, actually, figure to tell you of whenever we talk about neurons or nerve cells, what we mean by that. When we talk about brain, as you see, this is our brain. It has at least 4 loops. I mean, if we want to divide it to just 4 big parts, but it's not the case that we just talk about frontal lobe, we talk about parietal, temporal, and occipital lobe. Each of them is responsible for different things, okay? But there's a kind of network in that. I mean, that they are not just different, they are not separated, I can say. And even their functions are interrelated. But mostly we can talk about frontal lobe. Here, I mean the frontal lobe, which is mostly responsible for our executive function, thinking, planning, problem solving. And these things, we have motor cortex, sensory cortex. These 2 cortex are related to movement and sensation. We have parietal lobe, which is responsible for perception in general. We have temporal lobe, which is responsible for language, for understanding, for actually hearing. And we have occipital lobe at the back of our head that is responsible for vision in general. I just wanted to mention that when we talk about learning, we talk about the whole brain, all these aspects. You cannot omit just some aspects and you say that, okay, I just want to improve, for example, the problem solving abilities. But okay, your goal is actually improving their problem solving. That's okay. But you should be aware that you talk about the whole brain. They are connected, they're interconnected, okay? There are lots of networks, circuits in your brain, and you should be aware of that. I just wanted to mention that if you want to know more about brain and how we can relate it to education, this is just a kind of introduction today, but you should learn, you should go through more and more reading yourself, you know. And this is a great quotation here. It says, "Who dares to teach must never cease to learn." If you want to learn more and more, I suppose it's a good idea. Just go through actually learning about brain, because brain matters, really matters in education, in memory, in learning. Whenever we talk about these aspects, some keywords are really important and we should be aware of them. One of them is cognition. Cognition refers to a range of mental processes related to the acquisition, storage, manipulation, and retrieval of information. Things like attention, memory. We call them some aspects of cognition. Even language is a kind of higher order, actually, cognitive process. Okay, and we will talk about one more thing, that is cognitive science. Cognitive science is not just related just to neuroscience, because some people suppose that cognitive science is the equivalence for neuroscience, but it's not the case. Neuroscience is just one aspect of cognitive science, but cognitive science is a kind of interdisciplinary field of study which is related to linguistics, neuroscience, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, artificial intelligence, education, and people from all these backgrounds come together to study in this field, cognitive science. Okay, now we talk about neuroscience in general, but we should be aware that neuroscience in general is different from cognitive neuroscience. When we talk about neuroscience, we talk about neurobiology, okay? It means how brain works, how the neurons are related, and these things. But when we talk about this is the whole picture of brain, neurons, they are related to each other, but we are not talking about how. The other thing is cognitive neuroscience. You should be aware that when we talk about cognitive neuroscience, it is a scientific field that is concerned with the study of biological processes underlying cognition. Okay, here we talk about biological processes, but we want to see which one is related to cognition, how they are related to cognition, and the relationship between our brain and our cognition. Okay. From 2 years ago somehow. As you see, we have something like this in our classes. You're familiar with these pictures. You see that there's a kind of computer. There's coronavirus, and March 2020, it was somehow at the time that we realized our classes are different nowadays. We can change our mindset even about classes, because most of you are teachers and you're familiar. That's how different it was for us. Of course, we had some online classes, we experienced that, but it was not our whole job. But today we see that even at the first stages, maybe we wonder that if it is possible just to have a class online. But after a while, we understood that us as human beings are really, really actually resilient in some way, and we are creative. And we can do actually these things. I always appreciate those teachers who didn't give up, and even during the pandemic and actually online teaching, they tried their best to continue and do not give up. I can say they are really brave, creative, and resilient teachers, because they could show that they are really flexible and they can change their mindset easily, and it's really important. Today we're going to talk about somehow, not the whole idea, but somehow the idea of one of the books by ESPINOSA, that is bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching. It's not exactly the same that she mentioned in the book, because it needs a kind of neuroscientific knowledge, but I try to have a combination here just for those of our friends who are not familiar with these words or with some academic things or terminologies related to neuroscience. I tried my best to oversimplify it. And these are the books, her books. I highly recommend you to download them and read some of the books, especially Neuromyth and bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching. Even that making classroom better, that is a kind of practical guide for you in your real classes. Okay, we're going, this was a very, very rough introduction to neuroscience and brain and these things. Now, we're going to talk about the other aspect. We're going to talk about bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching, how it can be possible. When we want to move from that stage to this stage, from traditional classes, we can say, to online classes, we have to keep some aspects, we have to toss out some aspects, we have to give away some aspects of that, we have to store something, we have to replace other things, and maybe we acquired new things. We are going to talk about them in more details. First of all, one of the most important things that we had even in our classes before the pandemic, we had actually something like feedback. You are almost familiar with feedback and different kinds of feedbacks. It's really important, even in online classes, to have that, but you should bear it in mind that even nowadays, people are under lots of pressure, their life is really hard, they experience anxiety, you know, even children or adults, no matter. You know, you should be aware that they are not in a really normal situation these days. And we do not want to have lots of pressure on them. Okay, maybe we can just help them to be relaxed in our classes. Especially these days, it matters because maybe some of our students lost some of their friends, some of their family members during this pandemic, or many things happen to people. We should be aware that these days it should be more important for us, and we should be aware about emotion of our students. Here we have, for example, limbic system. Limbic system in your brain is a system which is related to your emotion. And we know that cognition and emotion, they should work together. We cannot just talk about one aspect of that. Okay. This is just one idea that how our brain works. It's oversimplified, but I want you to think about it, okay? It says, for example, consider you have some sensory inputs to your brain. It's a computational model for brain. It's not the only way, but it is really easy to understand. It says that the brain generates a prediction by computing a weighted sum of its sensory inputs. It means you have lots of sensory inputs and your brain computed the weighted sum of these ones, okay? Then your brain predicted something, but you have a kind of actual stimulus here, which you received. Now, your brain compares that prediction and this actual stimulus. Here we have a kind of prediction error, and it makes a kind of surprise. The other one says, okay, after that, your brain tries to do something else. This time, he knows better. I mean brain, because maybe sometimes I personify it. I mean it. It actually has a kind of prediction. Okay, this time a better prediction. But still, there is a difference between actual stimulus it receives and prediction. This happens again and again, and after a while, you can see the prediction will be closer to reality. Okay. Now, but what do we toss out in these online classes? It seems that teaching to the test and timed exams should be eliminated somehow. You know, it's really stressful to have a kind of timed exams online in online classes for your students. Students get nervous if I lose my connection, if I don't know something happens to me, and maybe it's not a good idea. That even maybe they have more chance for cheating and those things. But anyway, it seems that teaching to the test is not a good idea these days. And maybe we have to think about other aspects and other ways to teach. Yeah, we should change our minds anyway about this. What do we give away? Of course, we do not have those rules. or say circles or semicircles in our classes. But we should know, we should understand, at least these days, that education is an exchange, not a lecture. Okay, should be aware that in your classes there should be a kind of relationship, and you're familiar with a rapport. You should have a great rapport with your students. In online classes, building rapport is really hard comparing to actual classes. You should be aware that it's not the case that you are a teacher, just come here and say something and go back home. It's not the case. Even in classes of adults, because some people believe that the good relationship is just related to classes of children, but it's not the case. Even adults have emotions, you know. You should touch their emotions if you want to actually have a great impact on them. Just being a lecturer there doesn't work. And of course, maybe online classes helped us to reduce our costs even in our classes. Yeah, maybe this is a good point. Anyway, textbooks work in online class or ordinary class, no matter. Anyway, textbooks are important. We should replace evaluation system. We talked about it, that maybe the evaluation which is based on at the end of the term just test doesn't work, and it's a better idea to have another kind of evaluation without that timed test at least. Of course, curriculum is different, resources are somehow different, not absolutely different. When we talk about pedagogy, yeah, pedagogy is different in online classes, and also even environment is different. It's really hard to understand that if your students are fully focused in your class or not. And that's a real challenge. Okay? You cannot understand. In real classes, I mean, in classes before online classes and face-to-face classes, maybe you had that experience. You can understand that, okay, this person cannot focus on my lecture, for example. But now it's not the case. That you should be really, really aware about this one. And we can say that in online classes or even online lectures like this, or even online webinars, attention really matters. Not all people are able to attend to a class online. Okay, people are different. You should bear it in mind. People are different. Maybe some of them even have attention deficit problems. Okay? And for those people with attention deficit problems, online classes are the worst things. You know, this is really, really bad for them. But anyway, we acquired good things even during this pandemic. During this pandemic, we had actually to change our attitude. We even sometimes understood that some problems can be opportunities for us. And we understood that flexibility is a valuable personality trait, and resilience matters here. Okay, if you are a kind of person who is really flexible, you wouldn't have lots of problems with this coronavirus and these lockdowns and these bad situations. But for most of other peoples, maybe it would be really, really hard if they are not flexible people. And we learned new skills. Just we understood, we found new softwares. We could understand how to work online and how to work with many of these softwares or these platforms. It can be a good idea. When we talk about, for example, grief, even for death, okay, we talk about denial and isolation at the first step, then anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It seems that we are according to. Yes, yes.
Sorry for the interruption. Guys, can you hear Sepdidah? Because some sent me in WhatsApp that they could not hear you well.
Really?
I don't know. They sent me in WhatsApp that a lot of people could not. I mean, maybe guys, you need to refresh your Microsoft Teams. But please, if you feel that the voice is audible and very clear, please write in the chat box, please. People keep sending me in WhatsApp, guys. So you need to please refresh your Microsoft Teams. Yeah, we got a lot of yeses, yes.
Yes.
Because they send me right. like five or more than 7 that they cannot hear you. So please, guys, please. I'm sorry, Sepdidah, for interruption.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, we are. It seems that. Thank you all for your comments. Okay, thank you. If we want to talk about these stages of grief, I suppose that according to coronavirus, we are at the stage of acceptance nowadays. That okay, that's enough just to actually just nagging and saying no, why it's like this, or denial, or no, we should change this way, or something like that. We are at the acceptance actually stage. Okay, so far, anything to add? Any question or something? At the next stage, I want to talk a bit about mind, brain, and education, and show you some aspects of that. If there is a question or there is something to share, you can write it in a chat box. Acceptance. Yeah, these are the stages. You said that depression after bargaining and acceptance. Yeah, of course, after that, depression happens. Because depression is at the level that you do not have any hope. You understand the situation. In depression, you understand the situation. In denial, no. You cannot understand what's happening exactly. But when you talk about depression, you know something bad is happening, but you are depressed and you think there is no hope, I cannot change my life or something. Yeah, that's why depression is at the last stage. And it's not a bad idea to be depressed in some aspects, okay? Even these stages of grief are something normal. Okay, it is for normal people, I want to say. I don't mean actually depression means that a kind of really, really severe disorder. I'm not talking about disorder, okay? I'm not talking about major depression. Major depression is a kind of disorder. I'm not talking about it. It's just a very, very slow and a very actually tangible part of that depression. Yeah, Thank you. Let's move on. Okay. Now, let's move on to mind, brain, and education. Here, I just wanted to mention, as you see, there are lots of disciplines which are related to learning. Okay, you can look at learning from the perspective of psychology, for example, from educational sciences. But here we talk about mind-brain education, means combination of psychology, education, and neuroscience. Now, we're going to talk about some principles of actually learning based on your book. It talks about uniqueness. It says no brains are identical. Okay, it means that it's like your fingerprint. Every and each person's fingerprint is different. And as you see, their brain is different because their prior experiences are different. Their prior knowledge is different. Their actually genetic aspects is different. Everything is different for them. Okay. Now, we should be aware that people have different potentials. It is really, really important. You should bear it in your mind that people have different potentials. You shouldn't think that all people learn the same. In online classes, the situation is worse. Okay. For example, I mentioned that if a person has a kind of ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, that person cannot concentrate on whatsoever you say in a class, you know, and maybe you should do something else for that. That is important. You shouldn't think that all people are the same, all students are the same, their intelligence is the same, their IQ is the same, their prior knowledge is the same or something. No, it's impossible. We do not have even two actually identical twins are not the same, let alone other people. Yeah, okay. They have different prior learning, they have different personal choices, their individual's biology is, every individual's biology is different. They have prior experiences, different prior experiences, okay? Your prior experiences are really, really, really important. Why? Because they shape your brain, they shape your body, they shape everything, okay? If you have a kind of phobia, usually you have a kind of prior bad experience of that thing that happened. You have a kind of phobia, for example, claustrophobia. Okay. The other thing is constant changes. You should be aware that your brain is a complex system. Maybe you've heard complex system in physics. It's really famous terminology in physics. They say complex system. Okay. Your brain is a really, really complex system in that sense even. It is dynamic and it's a kind of integrated system. It's not static. Bear it in mind that you can change your brain. Even if your prior experience was not, prior experiences influenced your brain in a bad way. Anyway, you can change it. Even your teacher can change it. Even you as a teacher can change it, okay? It's really important to know that your brain is constantly changing. by your experiences. Okay. The other one is the fact that your brain is plastic. Okay. We have a notion that's called neuroplasticity. It means that you can change, or I can put it in this way. Brain can be changed structurally and functionally. Even the structure of your brain changes over time. Even if you learn something new, your brain changes constantly, okay? Of course, because we have brain plasticity, we can learn new things. And even for example, consider a person who suffers from a stroke. Maybe you have that experience that one of your family members or your friends or someone that you know suffers from stroke. And at the first stages, that person couldn't move after stroke. But after a year, for example, and after physiotherapy, which helps that person, brain is actually changing gradually, and that person, after 1 year of stroke or something, can actually move, for example. Or at the first stages, he or she cannot talk, but later he or she can speak. It means that neuroplasticity helps here. It doesn't mean that in all cases we have neuroplasticity, no. But you should be aware that in some cases it depends on that actually injury and the location of that stroke and those things, maybe it would be different. Okay? I mean the location which was influenced by that stroke. Here we talk about memory and attention system. Just I want to mention some aspects of memory and some aspects of attention. You should know that there is no learning without some sort of memory and some sort of attention. Some sort of means it shouldn't be totally conscious, but there should be a kind of memory responsible for that, and there should be a kind of attention responsible for that. Okay. This is the oversimplified actually picture of your brain and parts which are related for different things. For example, for executive function, we can say that frontal lobe is mostly representative of executive function. About attention, we can say something around parietal, not just parietal, but the simplified version says, okay, this is the most important part. For episodic and semantic memory, maybe that temporal, even some parts of frontal lobe is responsible. And for visual perception, maybe we have that occipital lobe. We're going to talk about different kinds of memory. First of all, we talk about working memory. Working memory is a kind of memory which retains a mental representation in active for a few seconds. It's somehow short-term memory, okay? It's a kind of short-term memory, but it's active, working, okay? It's not passive. What does it mean? It means it can manipulate the information. It's not just storage. It can even manipulate that information. This is a model for working memory. Okay, we can say that we have some sensory input. This sensory input goes through sensory buffers. And something in the middle, it says a functional framework. We have a working memory there. general executive, working storage. In working storage, we have two parts. Just I wanted to mention, it's a really complicated model. I don't want to talk about it in more details, but as you see, we have sensory inputs and then we have working memory, okay? And response output. These are the locations in your brain and regions in your brain which are related to working memory. I don't want to go through the details, but I want you to see that different parts of your brain are responsible for working memory. It's not just frontal lobe. If we want to talk about working memory, we should say that the capacity is something around 5 to 9 elements or chunks, okay, at a time. And it's constantly being updated, okay? It's not something static. You know, I tried to make my PowerPoint as a kind of manual for you. I mean that I do not talk about every and each aspect of that here, but I've written them here. Whenever you have any problem or any questions, you can contact me about these things, because the information in this PowerPoint slide is really much more than what I talk about this today, actually, in this session. For working memory, the simplest example is remembering phone number of your friend. For example, your friend says, my phone number is 134568. You say 134568, 134568. You actually retain it in your working memory and maintain it there. And then after a few seconds, you write it somewhere. And after that, maybe you cannot remember it anymore. Or you can remember. It depends on how that memory happened, created, actually. We talked about working memory. This part is about long-term memory. Okay, we have declarative memory and non-declarative memory. We are not talking about non-declarative memory here. We talk about declarative memory. We have two kinds of declarative memory: episodic memory and semantic memory. Okay, just we can talk about them. First of all, episodic memory is a memory, for example, about what did you eat for breakfast this morning? I ask you, what did you eat for breakfast this morning? You say something, and you know with whom, when, and where you ate your breakfast today. Or for example, I ask you about your 16th birthday. How was it? For example, when was that? Who were that? With whom you celebrated your birthday? And where did you go? Okay? This is a kind of episodic memory. You can remember it like a scenario of something that sequentially you can remember what happened to you. But when we talk about semantic memory is a kind of memory. For example, you know who the president of the United States is. Okay, you know that person. This is your semantic memory. You do not who told you the first time, for example. When was the first time? That you cannot remember the story. You do not have a scenario for that. you know that, okay, the president of the US is blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is your semantic memory. Maybe at the first stages, your memory could be something like episodic memory, but later it becomes just semantic memory. And when we talk about memory, we talk about experiencing an episode, then you have a kind of storage, and then you have a kind of recall. Okay. In memory, you should be aware that consolidation matters. Okay. It means that at the first stages you have effortful processes, but then you have unconscious and automatic processes after consolidation. And in consolidation, sleep matters, okay? Just bear it in mind that sleep matters for consolidation. And procedural memory, we're not talking about it. I just wanted to mention that something like driving a car. That's a kind of procedural memory, that you know how to do things. In semantic memory, you know what these things are, but in procedural memory, you know how. Attention is the ability to flexibly control limited computational resources. Look at just the picture there. You see some actually green circle there, okay? It means that you just focus on that. This is your attention span, for example, and your conscious spotlight is there. We have two kinds of attention, bottom-up attention and top-down attention. Bottom-up attention is stimulus-driven. Top-down attention is goal-directed. When we talk about bottom-up, it means from stimulus to brain. But when we talk about top-down, we talk about brain to the environment, okay? And in top-down, you have a kind of goal. It's goal-directed. Attention and memory are really close together, and they're really important. And we should know that without any sort of attention or without any sort of memory, we do not have learning, okay? And just we should be aware that there are some tenets. So far we talked about principles, but there are some tenets here. Like, for example, motivation, emotion, stress, anxiety, depression, blah, blah, blah. These are related mostly to emotion. It means there are tenets. They are different from one person to another person. Okay? But principles are the same for all people. If we want to be a kind of MBE teacher, we can actually be first at the first stage. We should be aware of attitudes and prejudices that we have. We have many false information, some false information about education, and we should fix them first. We should know the principles of teaching. We should know the tenets. We should know the culture, and then we go through those instructional guidelines. There is a part wrap up here. I do not want to talk about it here because there are lots of actually things related to your classes that it's a kind of practical part of that. But you can take a look at this part. It's something like a guide for you. And I suppose we talked about the most actually important aspects so far. Just it's the time for you to ask your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Sepdidah, for amazing and insightful session about bringing the neuroscience of learning to online teaching. Okay, guys, Sepdidah will share with us. Will share with me the PowerPoint, so I will email the PowerPoint, okay, and the recording. And please, just before we start, and allow the mics to ask the questions. So the feedback link is there, attendance. So please, you need to fill it. And then when you submit, there is a link to that will take you to download your certificate, okay? So the link is already there. Okay, now I'm going to allow the mics. Please, you can raise your hand if you want to speak directly to Sepdidah, or you can leave your questions in the chat box, okay? I think, Sepdidah, that time you can go to the chat box. There are a lot of questions. You can take notes and then. Okay,
yes,
let me allow the mics first. Allow the mics that we can, and you can see the hands raised. Okay. Can you see the hands raised? I mean, you can.
Oh, no. Yeah, I can. Shall I let them just talk, or?
Okay, please, you can unmute yourself. What? I think yes. Okay. You can choose now. You can choose the hands.
Okay. I mean, should I do something? I don't know what to do. Just call them.
Yeah, call them. And they will unmute themselves. Okay, let me start from the down. Okay, I think Abdulaziz, right? Abdulaziz.
Yes.
You already
Abdulaziz here.
Yeah. Yes.
Do you hear me? Do you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
Okay. Good. All right. So first, thank you very much for this fantastic presentation. Very, very rich and enlightening. I have one question for you. If you could share with us one or two activities that you use with your students in your teaching that worked for you, and that is related to the neuroscience, or we want some practical activity that you use with your students, and you would like to share it with us so that everybody can benefit from, if possible, please.
Yeah, sure. It takes time, I suppose. Maybe I can talk about it later, but if I want to talk about it in a nutshell, I can say that if we know about a neuromyth, maybe we can talk about it later. If we know that some aspects of our knowledge is just a kind of neuromyth. If we know that, okay, when I talk about learning, I talk about the whole brain. Okay, it's not just one part of the brain which is related to vision. If I understand this one in my own classes, I do not believe in learning styles that say, okay, this person is visual, this person is auditory. They are kinds of neuromyths. Okay, we do not believe them in a neuroscientific field of study. They believe that no, it's not the case. There is no, you're familiar with VAC or VAC. They say visual, auditory, kinesthetic people. They're different. It's not the case. All people use all parts of their brain. Maybe their motivation is different. That's another story. That's emotion. But when we talk about brain, in every and each of my own classes, I use all these things together. I use visual, auditory, kinesthetic things. I do not believe in learning styles, for example. If you want to make it more practical, you should be aware of neuromyth. But just going through that needs some information about brain, because without understanding the brain itself, we cannot talk about neuromyth.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Others, I cannot read the names properly. I'm so sorry, but I tried my best. Vinzia, I suppose.
Good afternoon, Sepdidah. Thank you so much. Am I audible and clear? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear.
Okay.
Yes, yes, I can.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for this very interesting session. And you've touched on so many aspects of neuroscience and gives us enough food for thought to see how we can bring it practically into the classroom. My question is about, you touched upon different intelligences, that we actually have different intelligence.
Oh, I lost your voice.
Can you hear me? Are you able to hear
Yes,
me?
now, yes.
So
Now.
my specific question is about the multiple intelligences which Howard Gardner talked about. How do we incorporate that into a typical classroom? Because children have different abilities, different interests. So one task, can it have multiple answers and each answer being given the same value as the other? I just want your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I said that when you talk about emotion, that is another story. But when you talk about brain and how the brain works, and you should be aware that if you have more codes, because you are encoding information in your memory, okay? If you have more codes, you can understand better. If you have auditory and visual and kinesthetic codes at the same time, this memory is stronger comparing to just visual, for example. Okay, my point was that you should give them as many codes as possible. That this the kind of memory is stronger comparing to just one code via visual, for example, aspects. But yeah, people are different. Of course, they're different, but they should try to actually be flexible and use all parts of the brain. You know, it's really important, even for us, to use all parts of our brain. Even if we are not good at one specific thing, we should try to be better at that specific actually aspect, to use our brain better. And it's a very famous thing that we say, use it or lose it. This happens for brain. If you do not use one part of that, you lose it. It's weakened.
I have one more question, if I may, or if you would like to move on, you can. It is related to assessment. How do we assess students when can we really, because usually exams have one format and one format for all students, but maybe there are students who would probably do better if you give them a different way of expression. But unfortunately, assessment does not consider this. I just want your thoughts again on this.
Sure, that's the problem. It's not just the problem that we mention here. I suppose all around the world it happens, and it's a kind of major problem in education. That's how we can assess people. If you have a kind of guideline, for example, you work in an institute and there's a kind of guideline, you should go through that guideline. Of course, you cannot change everything for yourself. But if you can actually have your own curriculum, or you can have a kind of evaluation for yourself, you are able to do that. That's a good idea, not to have a kind of final exam or put too much pressure on people for what? You know, that's a really, really bad idea to have just one session of even open book questions work better in some cases, because they go through that, they learn more and more comparing to just sitting somewhere and actually having kind of exam.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Thank you for attending this webinar.
Hello, may I share my experience in evaluation if possible?
I do not know if we have time or not.
Okay.
If we can extend the time, I have no problem, but maybe the organizers can help.
Just to give a little tip to the ladies who just asked. Actually, if you own the course, as you mentioned, if you have a say in how you can evaluate your course, you can do what we did. Actually, we did an oral test online, where I can have my student in front of me, and I go through the questions. I ask the student and he answers. And actually, we use Blackboard. I'm sure you're familiar with Blackboard. We use Blackboard, and we ask the students the questions, and we answer the questions for the student. And then we have some, or like, for example, we give a picture to a student and say, look, tell us what you see. Or we give them a graph, we ask them to describe the graph. And we have a rubric to use to evaluate the students. So that's one way of evaluating students online, if you can do it orally, and we did it actually. It was very successful. So you spend like something like 7 to 10 minutes with each student, going through the questions, getting them to answer them, and you listen to their answers. Some of them are multiple choice, you just pick the right choice, and others are like they have to explain, they have to discuss certain things, and there is a rubric for that. Just to share this idea with you.
Thank you. And there is a book that is by ESPINOSA. That's the book Making Classroom Better. There you can see some practical aspects of brain-based learning and how you can use it in practice. That is called Making Classroom Better by ESPINOSA. I have it in my PowerPoint, so you can just take a look at it later, and you can maybe download the PDF. Just to read it to understand how it works in practical classes.
Sepdidah, can you go to next one? Raise one.
Yes. Rachmanin, I suppose, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Hello?
Rukminingsih, you mean? Yes.
What's your name?
Rukminingsih from Indonesia.
Rachmanin.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Dr. Sepdidah. Is it right, your name? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, it's really, I'm very interested in having sharing from you, because actually that my research area is also dealing with the neuroscience, brain-based teaching, brain-based learning, etc. Yeah. Right now, I'm conducting research about this. But actually, that we know when we are conducting research about neuroscience or brain-based teaching, brain-based learning, actually that in online learning, it means that it is not as usual when we have an offline learning. For example, when we are creating the atmosphere, positive atmosphere. For example, in the positive atmosphere for the offline, we can making our positive environment more comfortable, yeah, etc. Yes, okay.
الان داره تو دانشگاه عمان پرزنتیشن میده.
Okay. And then
رفتم ببینم چه جوریه.
Can you hear my voice?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. And then my question is, right now in Indonesia, neuroscience is part of an umbrella of the approach of curriculum. Okay, and then curriculum, of course, dealing with the instruction, of course, with the assessment, etc. Okay, and then can you share how you implement in your practical, especially when you give the students, it's like in a lesson plan, for example, for the teaching, and then visual, and then also the post. It means that it's dealing with we are talking about the working memory, limbic system, and then prefrontal, etc. How can we connect among them in our curriculum? I want to share this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much for attending this webinar, and that was a really hard question, and it needs
yes, we have the same.
hours. It needs another webinar. But in a nutshell, I can say that whenever I know that if, for example, this person, I mean in generally speaking, people can just have something around 7 plus minus 2 elements in their mind. It means something around 5 to 9 elements in their mind, in their working memory. Okay, I do not bombard them with lots of information. Okay, I know that they cannot bear that much information in the working memory. That would lead to cognitive load, and they can learn nothing. Okay, that in my curriculum, for example, in my lesson planning, I should be aware of that. For example, limited capacity. Okay, and I know, okay, today I have to talk about just these aspects. More than this is impossible for that person to encode, for example.
Okay. Okay, that's maybe our difficulty that we have to solve the problem, especially when we are talking about neuroscience, right? When we know that we have it's like a executive function, how to build up student executive function, and how to build up working memory in an online learning. It's sometimes make us difficult, but I'm so sure. I believe that neuroscience is the hottest issues, I think, in the world.
Yeah,
yes.
sure. But we should, be aware that, brain is really important, but not everything is brain, okay? When we talk about human beings, even we talk about body, okay? Body is important too. Not everything is just brain and whatsoever happens here. Anyway, we experience lots of things through our actually body. But yeah, you're right that these days neuroscience is everything.
Sometimes I implement I give the brain brick in my class in order to make the students and the comfort span, because we know that every students, we know that different span of their concentration, etc. Yeah. Okay, thank you for sharing, for good sharing. Maybe next time we can write together about neuroscience. Okay, thank you.
Sure. We can be in contact. Why not? Thank you so much. And the last one is Joseph Kati, I suppose. Maybe the last person.
Joseph Kati, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly, so could you please unmute yourself if you want to ask? Meanwhile, Sepdidah, you can go to the chat. I mean, there are a lot of questions. If you can have an idea and then give brief ideas. Okay.
Yes. Maybe I can write my actually email here, because maybe we do not have time to answer all these questions. I can write my email in the chat box. And if I couldn't answer some of the questions, they can email me.
Okay, you can write your email in the chat box. So yeah, okay, good. Well, anyways, that if you can go to the chat and just
yes.
choose one or two, we still have time.
Okay, sure.
And tell me if you need any help, I can.
No, I'm reading them, but some of them are not just questions. They're just other things in the chat. But I'm searching for the questions. How can we identify the learner's ability regarding all learning styles, kinesthetic, visual, and so on and so forth? Maybe you do not need it. You do not need to understand learning styles. You can, first of all, you can understand in your classes that, okay, this person loves, for example, videos. but that person does not. But in reality, in online classes, how you can have a kind of kinesthetic kind of teaching, it can be really hard. They can do it at home or something, but handling this situation, I suppose it's really hard. At most, you have just visual and auditory aspects. Maybe you can have a kind of homework for them or something else, but you cannot do it together, you know, that's the point. But generally speaking, you do not need to know the learning styles. You should know, I can say you should know different personality traits. It's more important to know human beings, to know their brain, to know how it works. You know, I mean their brain works in this way. I suppose it's more important to know. For example, it's more important to know that this child suffers from attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. If you know this, it's more important that you know, okay, this person is actually visual or auditory or whatsoever. If you know this, you know, as your friend said, okay, attention span is not too much. You should pay attention to that. And after, I don't know, 10 minutes of class, you should actually give them a kind of break. Okay? I don't think that learning styles really works. Maybe it's related to emotional aspect of that. It's really good. But it's a neuro myth to think that this person loves visual actually input. I can give him or her just visual things. No, you should use all your brain and you should use many codes, as you can. That works. Yeah, some of our friends actually talked about practicality of these things because it was the first session, and I knew that most of the people who are in this session, they do not have any actually neuroscientific background, and maybe it's something normal. They haven't actually worked on that yet, and they do not know that. That's why today I try just to have the rough idea about it. But maybe in other sessions we can talk about practical implications and how we can work on the practical actual aspect of that. Thank you.
There is a question about grammar, I think. How can you see it?
Could you please give an example of how to mix the emotions and present simple? It's not just about present simple, it's about teaching, okay? In teaching, we have a stage that is called sometimes personalization. At the activation stage, at the last stage that you taught, you want your students to personalize it, okay? You say that, yeah, talk about yourself. What do you do every day, for example? This is a kind of, this touches their emotion. When you talk about their own things, their own personality traits, or you talk about their own routines of their life, that they say, okay, yeah, I go to school every day. This is more emotional comparing to say he goes to. Just this, he should be related to a person. For example, that person should have a picture to understand, this is emotional. When he says, okay, this person, he goes. That's why that books have pictures, or we have things that they link it to other aspects. We cannot understand meaningless things, okay? All the things that make a kind of memory, they should be meaningful. this is the property of your brain. If something is not meaningful, your brain put it away, okay? No matter. Because your brain, first of all, wants to be survived. And because of lots of information, much information, you're bombarded by that every day, your brain tries to omit as much as possible information and just actually stores that information which is meaningful. Okay? Because of that, we talk about emotion. If something gets emotional, you learn it better. For example, you have the experience of, I don't know, something in your life happens, really emotional. For example, your wedding party, and you can remember every and each second of that. Why it happened? Because wedding is really emotional. Okay, and you have a great memory of that. That's why we say that emotion is really important and emotion matters. And about references, I have it in my PowerPoint. I talked about some of them so far, but you can just take a look at that. Most of the books that I've mentioned are from ESPINOSA. Why does episodic memory get wiped away with time? It doesn't wipe away. You know, the kind of memory is different. The first and the fast actually memory is in our hippocampus. That's episodic memory. But later, slowly, it goes through neocortex in the outer layer of our brain. But it happens slowly. Okay? And through that consolidation, just meaningful and important points are kept there. That's how somehow semantic episodic memory changes to semantic memory.
Okay, Sabina. There are a lot of questions, so you can. I think that you share your email address in the chat box, so they can contact you. Guys, for sharing the PowerPoint, the recording, PowerPoint, Sabina will share everything related to this session with me, and then I will email it. Yeah, I will email it for everyone who has filled the attendance of feedback link. Okay, guys, it's time now to say a big thank you, a million thanks for our guest speaker from Iran, Sabida. It was amazing, insightful, and informative session. And thank you all, guys. And yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you.
And enjoy your tea, coffee, Sabida.
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
water. Okay, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you for attending this session, everyone. I hope to see you in next webinar. Goodbye. Have a nice day.
It was amazing. Yeah, thank you for wonderful. Thank you, guys. Bye, bye, and see you in our future webinars.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye. You can wave.
Yeah, bye.
Okay, bye. I'm going to keep the chat open, so if you want to answer them, okay, it's okay.